Thank you very much indeed, Kasha. Hi, I'm Paul Furey. If we haven't met before, so the team have got for our final webinar or interactive session today. As Kasha said, it's a topic that really lends itself well to lots of people chipping in. And so please do, the maybes, you're not being tested. We're all in this together, and you'll be in good company up on the screen here. I see Diane's joined, so I think the others are going to come in and say hello now.
Hi.
Oh, and I think I need to free up Catherine's microphone, so bear with Catherine. That was my bad. So stay with me. And where are we? No, you've got a microphone, Catherine. Go for it.
Hello.
No.
I'm here. Yes.
So Catherine will be leading this session, and well, why don't I let you just tell us a bit about it, Catherine, and what you're going to have us doing.
So we all know that teams matter, and I know many of you that are here will have been to Paul's webinars before, and we hear lots of people saying that when something in your team or in your group's not quite right, you have that feeling a bit like this picture here of a great big chasm or a gap between you. And put the other way, when teams are working well together, they can do more, get things done faster, and they back each other's decisions. So we're all about trying to mend the group, giving you the tools to mend the group. And we're about developing talent. So just to that point, I don't know whether we've, and we're just trying to get some gauge where you'd be on volunteering. But this is a great opportunity to practice your talent in mending dynamics. And we're going to give you the tools. You'll be on screen with a couple of other people, and we'll give you the topic, so you won't be on your own. Just would really encourage you to take part and develop your talent. So we've got this 3 developing talent, and what we do is we help recognize where people have the beginnings of this talent and get them just to do it and practice it. So it starts with the know it, and it's kind of knowing that something needs to be mended. And then the seeing it, they're the things that perhaps in the run up to this you heard Paul talk about, which is the barely visible signs that something isn't quite right. And then moving into saying it with respect, or saying it for the purpose of the group, so they can come together to mend the group. And that's what this session is all about. So I don't know where we are with the volunteers, just if we need to say any more about that, but we keep talking about this it and mending it. And Paul's got, my beautiful assistant, Dr. Paul Furey, is about to put this up on the screen. So often in meetings, and like now, you might be paying attention to the words, the facts that are being said, or the events that come up between people that in what seems to be happening in the room. But actually what's going on underneath is everything else. It's all the feelings, perhaps the things that aren't said, the thoughts, it's all down there. And it's in this gap that the problems lie and where we need to mend things. So that's what we want to pay attention to. So we want to form a group now and invite some people to come up and join us. We're going to have a couple of Paul Furey people. I think Diane and Rachel are going to stay on for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to duck out in a moment. And I was just going to say, Catherine, if anyone's watching and they want to put their hand up to volunteer to be part of this, that's a good way for us to know to pull you in. I'm going to duck out for this bit. Have fun.
Well, I'll call you back if we need you, but I'm hoping we might find some people to come and join us. How are we doing? Now, I can't see from Nicola whether we've got new volunteers. Can you see that, Rachel? Can any of you see that?
No, I'm afraid not.
No, I can't. But while we're waiting, because it's really worth waiting for these volunteers, Catherine, can I say a little bit more about about this diagram, which you started to explain?
You certainly can. That'd be great.
Great. So this business about, I'm just going to quickly recap to here. This know it, see it, say it business. This is about the theoretical knowledge that you have of yourself, this sort of mental picture of, I know what I'm capable of, and I know what the other people that I'm dealing with are capable of. The see it is actually seeing that happening in the room. And so it's one thing to know it, but then to have the capability to see it is really special. What we're going to have a crack at today is exercising your know it muscle, your self-knowledge muscle, and also watching to see what happens in the room. This say it piece is that. Hello, Amira. So that the real stretch is actually calling something out while it's happening. Sometimes it'll be a good thing, but often with a difficult group dynamic, what we can be most helpful to do is to call out the things that aren't working well. And so, and what we're talking about here, just as Catherine explained, is the feelings that happen down here, all the bits and bobs, which are the analog of what's happening here. But we tend not to talk about this because it's a bit dark and messy. But what we're going to practice doing today with Catherine's help is to take a little dive down, a kind of diversions down to where the action is, rather than trying to sort it all out at the factual, logical level. So that's what's going on in the background. So that's my bit of fill-in, Catherine. I hope that's good enough to be going on with. We can always come back to that.
So Hazel's joined us as well, and Amira. Is there anybody else that would like to join us at this point? So just while you're thinking about whether we call someone back from Paul Furey, there's one more slot up here. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a topic to talk about, as if you were a real team really helping us kind of think about what's happened today. Hi, Natasha. Thank you for coming up.
Oh, terrific.
And
we've got a
your role
real
here is to, we've got full house. Thank you, Natasha. Natasha, are you able to put your camera on, or are you with a low bandwidth at the moment?
Hi, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. So we're going to give you a topic to talk about, which is the content of the conversation. But what I want you to do is notice how the conversation is going at the same time. And I'm actually going to dip out while we do that. So it's you having a conversation together. I'm going to let the conversation run for 3 or 4 minutes, and then we're going to just stop and notice what might have happened. And for anybody else watching, be an active participant here and notice yourself what's happening in the conversation. So you're a real team here, and it might be the case that perhaps some of you are working with clients or your partners to look at how an event has gone and what to learn from it. And I want you to think about what's happened today and what can we learn from taking these events online for Paul Furey together. So that's the what. So I'm going to back out and let you carry on with that conversation.
Well, hi guys, I went first this morning, so that was quite an experience. I've done some delivery online myself previously, but it's a little while now. I've really loved being able to see people, so feeling more connected, and also having the opportunity to have a go with a different style of coaching that I normally use. I really enjoyed Amira's session, so well done to you. I thought it was brilliant when you were having a go at voicing conversation you're going to have with your boss. Could see that you got some value from that, clearly gained that, and it was great to see you up there. So thank you for volunteering as well.
No worries.
How did it feel for you?
Yeah, so really insightful. I'd say my week's been a crappy week, just from a point of like not very productive. Last week I had a really, really good week. And I'm really good at beating myself up about it. So it was nice actually to connect in this kind of forum. And I've listened to like a couple of other webinars which haven't been as interactive, but nice just to be in that circle. So today it was just good to actually, without me having thought about it or planned it, have that conversation and see what my key takeaways were from literally like a 20-minute role play. And I don't even think I'd got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm actually going to have this conversation. But it's there and it's in my head. So yeah, really, really beneficial.
Brilliant stuff. Natasha, how have you? Is this the first webinar you've joined for? Or have you been with us all day as well? I can't hear you, Natasha. I can't hear Natasha.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, I've attended both morning seminars, so really enjoying it. And yes, Amir also wanted to mention that, you know, when you start, when we went to this sort of little your case study scenario, it's amazing to hear how similar issues are. I thought, oh, thanks God they're discussing it. I'm quite interested in this. So yeah, it was a great experience. I think like many yourselves, I'm working from home this week. I actually found it's quite good. I think everyone is quite, all my colleagues are making a real effort to ensure we collaborate and our communications are good. So good so far. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So have you attended Paul Furey's webinars before, either of you?
Which one?
Have you attended any webinars where we haven't had it so interactive? So I think they were interested in understanding how we found this online experience and yeah.
I attended one before, I think a couple of weeks ago, where it was just a presentation. And I think those interactive ones, I think, because initially I was going to attend in London, but I think these interactive ones are working very well when I'm concerned. I think, yeah, quite good.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah,
how about you, Mira?
Sorry, I'm very bad at talking over people. So yeah, I've found it really useful, really interactive. I obviously think Paul leads really, really well as well. So I think there's like a real focus to every session. I think it's good because if people prefer to observe, they don't have to get involved. But then at least for people that do, you've got an example played out. And I think it works really well with Nicola collating all of the questions as well and making sure they're answered. So definitely like a lot of value add from my side from how effective like a webinar's been. And I do think that as much as a lot of the country are working from home, it's not for everybody. And it can take a while or just time to adapt. So I think that today's been really useful and that it's flowed and it's run really well.
Yeah, I feel that I've really enjoyed the opportunity for it to be more interactive. I wouldn't have been able to attend the workshops in London, so I was a bit gutted, but a colleague was going to attend and sort of feedback. So for me, it's been brilliant because I've been able to sort of have the content without the travel, which is excellent. So that's been really good. Yeah, it's a bit spooky seeing myself on screen. I'm not very happy about that. So I think that's the worst thing about this completely. It's like I hate the fact that I'm up on the screen and there's God knows how many people out there watching. But yeah, it's certainly you know, you get used to it, you get yourself out of your comfort zone. I think that's really a really good thing to do. And actually, I think we all probably underneath feel the same. Would I be right in saying that? Yeah.
Rachel, what are you thinking as somebody that's been part of the group organising this? You know, and this is probably our first time we've done this together, so as a team, and I mean a team that's people who've organised it, the panellists, and obviously our attendees. How's it been for you?
I think it's gone really well, actually, considering that we had to completely change how we were going to approach this in a week. I think, you know, this time last week we were still hoping to be in London and have the interactive workshops in person, to be able to bring this all together in 7 days and it go, I think, pretty well. Everyone seems to have pretty good internet connections, which is a relief. I know that's one of the things that has been an issue over over the past week. If you hear about Netflix having to slow its bandwidth and stuff due to over demand. Yeah, I think I'm not sure though how, with us being away from physically apart from one another, I think that you do lack those subtle cues of having to get into the conversation. You know, Amira, you said that you're really bad at talking over people, but actually it's really difficult to not do that when you're in a space like this, because you can't just, you know, sort of lean forward or interject in any way. So yeah, it's, I think the lack of social cues is difficult. Yeah, like,
Isn't that I want to go through? Simply a signal, you know.
So I'm just going to come back in and pause the conversation now, because we've just got to that point we're talking about subtle signs, and I wonder what any of you noticed in that conversation. And it's fantastic. We've had some comments on the chat as well. So I don't know what any of you noticed.
As people in the conversation?
Yeah, about how the conversation was, what was happening sort of perhaps underneath the surface, as well as the conversation that was going on.
So I was just going to say, initially from my side, I think Hazel took the lead within like the group, and led the conversation and steered the questions. And then from my feel and my perception, I'd say by the end of it, we had built some sort of rapport. Well, I definitely was like nodding along to what people had said, and laughed at what Diane had said as well. So from my point of view, I thought we got to a place where we were starting to build rapport and some sort of connection and like a similar feeling.
Yeah, I echo that, Amira. It was really nice to sort of get to the end where I shared my feelings on like not being comfortable on camera, but at least I sort of got the feeling that we had that rapport at the end. We were smiling, we were sort of in tune with each other and getting a lot from it, sort of thing. So it was great.
So I don't know what was really interesting for me, and in my is about a virtual experience, is I couldn't actually see who was speaking always. The screen was freezing or something was going on. But one of our panelists has said, where's, you know, what was happening to begin with is that the three of you, our partners, were talking, and Diane and Rachel weren't. So someone had noticed who was having the conversation. And then one of you said, what about you, Rachel? Or Diane, you brought in Rachel.
Yes, yeah. I was aware that it was quite difficult to break in, and that there was a silence. And I think when we're in teams, that awareness, and you and I have spoken about this today, Catherine, you know, trying to see it on screen is difficult. But I think within teams, especially if part of a team or a team leader, just being aware of our other people within that room, wherever that room is, and being able to bring them in. And Amira, you said particularly as well about it feels like you're breaking in and speaking over someone, and yet to an extent that can happen when we're face to face, of course. So being aware of it, especially on screen, but also when we're one-to-one with people, is really important.
And there's something really nice here on the chat box about so noticing the mood of this group, that it's the feeling of support and collaboration already, happiness and relief. And just in case anyone's not clear, you five have never spoken together as a group. So that's pretty.
No.
I totally missed the brief because I didn't even realise Diane and Rachel were part of our teams. I'm so sorry.
I would say the same. Yeah, no, I did as well.
Wasn't listening, clearly.
So actually what you've just done is clarify the brief. So I'm going to duck out again, and we're going to run the conversation again, and you might catch yourself or notice anything that's happening and how the group is working, what to bring to each other's attention. And then I'll stop you.
Catherine, this time,
yes.
Are we going to ask people to call it out as well? So if you remember, there was the possibility of say it, so that you've practiced some seeing it, And I'm wondering if you might find it rather interesting. So you've done some of this, knowing it, and maybe seeing if someone can shout something out. And so there's no such thing as talking out of turn. You know, you can just dive in if you see something of interest. No observation is too small. And yes, so that's what I would say. So give it a go.
Okay, can I just say as well, I was like Amira, and I didn't realise, Diane and Rachel, you were part of the team conversation either, so I do apologise. That wasn't deliberate on any part. So it was a three-way between me, Natasha and Amira. So apologies and welcome to the group. So I'm seeing lots of smiles, which is brilliant, which is make me feel really happy that we're enjoying the experience despite some minor difficulties in understanding the brief fully. Rachel, you were talking this morning about how the whole working from home is having an effect on you. How do you feel after today now, in terms of having gone through the 3 webinars?
I think I don't mind the working from home necessarily, because it is my normal anyway. But for me, the conversation I had this morning was more about missing that physical interaction. You know, being actually in a shared space with people and having those conversations. Though the experience today has been, I don't think I've really done much in the way of virtual group interactions. Really, it's predominantly in person, so it has been a bit of a departure for me. But to see it work so well has been refreshing and also reassuring. And to see that you can get on quite well with people so easily and still have that sort of rapport quite quickly, it's nice.
Absolutely brilliant. And Diane, can I ask you what your thoughts are on how the day has gone? You've been involved in each of the webinars as well.
I was concerned at the beginning, just that the uptake, and I've been really encouraged, and also by the people that's seen it through over the 3 sessions. I was worried about the technology, but we soon got into that, and I think that there's a greater confidence. I'm also impressed by the fact that, just as I think you've already said, or somebody's observed, that there is a sort of dynamic happening in this team, even though we've not met physically. Well, I've met Rachel, but we've not been a team before. And it does highlight for me the need to try and be really observant, even though we're in separate places. Mm-hmm. So that was why earlier I asked Rachel something, and it's just that's important, so that we don't have to feel we're speaking over. We each have a chance to say something. I know you're worried about Amira. Natasha, you're quiet. Can I ask you what you think?
I thought quite interesting that you mentioned about technology, but I thought, for example, if we compare group dynamics, maybe in the office environment, when you sit around the table and you might sit next to each other, you might not see their face or expression, whereas here we can see sort of maybe slightly unnatural, but everyone in front of us. I think it gives us an extra tools to see people's reaction, people's interest to talk. So I think it can support the better conversations. So, and if you so here's the technology, I think, can support us. So I thought it was quite great, quite good. That was my observation.
So it sounds like that you're saying you found a positive that maybe has been a surprise by being able to see everybody.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's an extra tool, you know, in our communication box, so where you can see people sort of, because we have not eyes on the side or our heads on the back, so you're able to sort of absorb more. So it's yeah, I think so.
That's interesting. Yeah. What about you, Amira?
I was just reading the comment that Paul put up on the slide. I think
it came and it went.
So I think Mitt said around, it felt like we were scoping each other out in the beginning to kind of find out our roles. and definitely that's how I felt from my side. And because I'm conscious not to talk over people and bulldoze, and I would rather everyone does have a chance to talk. And then because Hazel took the lead, so I was like, okay, cool, then I definitely won't. So yeah, Mitz, I was just agreeing with your comment.
Yeah, okay.
And also on that note, I'm really sorry. I have to go because I've got a team call. So I just mentioned it to Nicola, but I didn't want it to be rude if I just turn my webcam off.
Bless you.
You're not walking out on us, Amira.
No, but I thought, okay, you've given me the opportunity to speak, so I'm just going to add that in now.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Amira.
Thanks for joining.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Oh, thank you. Have a
Cheers,
good
guys.
one.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
I wonder if that's
So maybe this is, so this is maybe a good time to come back and go, what did we notice? Did anyone call anything out?
One thing that I noticed personally for me is that because we're not physically co-located together having this discussion, I feel personally that there's an element of impression management for me. So because I'm on camera, I'm very aware that I'm on camera. So whilst I've got, maybe if we were physically in person, there may have been sort of subtle cues. And when I said earlier about those natural subtle movements that you make that people pick up on, so that you know that you want to speak next or someone else can speak next, that yeah, I feel like I'm kind of just really aware that I'm on camera. And so even down to I quite like a sip of water because I've been talking and things, but I don't want to do that. And there's all those sorts of things that are going on for me, that there's this element of not really being fully true to me and letting myself have that sort of those natural cues that you may get in person.
This is bizarre. Paul is writing something for us. Paul, do you want to tell us what it is? Oh, is that a glass of water?
I think it's a glass of Guinness.
I've got mine.
So my sense is that you were noticing between you something that was happening, and you filled it in with actions, perhaps rather than noticing it for the group. So there was a moment, Diane, when it kicked off with Hazel asking questions, and someone's put in the chat around how you took the lead and you were kind of asking people, Hazel, one at a time. And I wondered if you were worried about where the conversation might go, and so was stepping into that, for example.
Wasn't worried about where the conversation would go, just more of a naturally take a lead, and just mindful that the best way often to do that, if people are a bit uncertain and hesitant and in a situation that's or an environment that's unfamiliar to them, then often somebody else taking the lead and just asking a question to take the pressure off everybody, and it's a way of getting everybody involved. So I wasn't really worried about where the conversation was going, just wanted the opportunity for everybody to have a voice, basically.
So you were noticing that it was strange, and it could feel strange for people.
Yeah.
And your solution was the questions.
Yeah.
Is there a natural expectation that somebody will take a lead and ask the questions? Isn't that what we're used to? And it translates. I think it translates into any method of the collaborating, even online, virtual like this. Yeah.
I think you're right, Natasha, and it's interesting for me to observe completely from the outside that the way that Hazel chose to take the lead was to help things go nicely. And it's obviously, Hazel, it seems to come very naturally to you.
It is my normal style. Yeah, it is, Paul. Thank you.
Underneath that, I can't help thinking, and you might say, oh, that's absolute nonsense, Paul, that there is a tension there, and I could even say that maybe you're not terribly comfortable watching people floundering.
Yeah, absolutely. I am habitual helper, I think. That's my nature. I'm a real people person, so if I can help in any way, shape or form, I will. I'm sort of very conscious of my own emotions in terms of this situation. As I said earlier, don't like being on camera. It's weird. I'm more used to it now than I used to be, because we have MS Teams that I'm operating on. I loved actually seeing everybody up there, though. I know it's an uncomfortable experience for all of us, but at times during the conversation, what I noticed was people were smiling, people were nodding, people were showing that they were listening to each other and engaged with each other, even though they weren't talking and they were listening to one voice. You could see still the team was really involved and taking the time to support each other. So yeah, it was good.
So one thing, while Catherine's scribbling, I'll fill in for her. So it was you were seeing people going to unusual lengths to help each other, much more than they would normally in a room. But again, you were picking up on, you were surmising that other people would need the extra comfort, and you were prepared to provide it.
Yeah.
All of you, yeah.
Absolutely.
You can see that everybody was providing it for each other.
Yeah.
So something else I noticed is that in a way the baton passed from you, Hazel, to Diane.
Yeah.
And I wondered, Diane, if you'd noticed Hazel was asking questions and we're trying to balance things out in some way, provide some balance.
Yes, because in some ways it's really helpful at the beginning, Hazel being able to do that. But then it felt, and what I noticed was there was very little gap to allow the space for somebody else to come in. So I sensed that clearly there's some lovely natural leading there from Hazel and encouraging, but especially when you're a team that don't know each other, and we're all polite people quite often, and they're just allowing space for someone to be able to also ask questions, articulate. So it was just a moment of wanting to come in and break that slightly, with all respect, Hazel.
No, absolutely. And actually, I noticed it and stepped back. And I was grateful that you had actually taken the baton over, because I felt absolutely don't want to be the person who is always leading in that kind of situation. So it felt appropriate that you stepped in there.
So if I can ask a question, Hazel, how would it have how would it have felt if I hadn't done that and you just allowed a silence?
Sorry, I had two jumping in there. Say again, Diane.
I just wondered how it might have felt if you had realising, because you said you realised you were doing it, having just paused and allowing a silence rather than me coming in and just allowing, being comfortable. How comfortable would you feel with being comfortable in just stopping and allowing it to see where it goes?
Yeah, I'm quite comfortable in a normal environment. I don't think this is currently with silence. I probably would have to work harder at silence in this kind of context, if that makes sense. So happy using silence in coaching conversations and things like that. That doesn't faze me. In this context, probably just a little more sort of less comfortable with letting the silence do its work. Just want it to be successful.
I just want to can I just pause this conversation for a moment while we work out and see if we've got anybody who would like to jump in and have a go in practicing this talent of know it, see it, say it. Would you raise your hand?
Because you're going to run the conversation again, aren't you? You're gonna get rid of this group and have another shot at it with some different faces, if there are some different faces, or we'll push this lot even harder.
Oh.
I can't see if any hands are raised. Nicola, can you just let us know?
I'm having a look as well, Catherine. I'm just scrolling down the group. So what I'm going to suggest, no, I don't see any hands. So I'm going to actually I'm going to invoke the Nigel. You've just put your hand up.
It's nice.
I was, yes, that, you saw that from 100 miles away.
Yeah,
But
and
also,
I can sense that you wanted to. Ah, there you are.
There it was up. Yeah.
So we're going to run the conversation. What
I think we
we've
have a
just.
volunteer actually.
Oh,
Oh, fantastic.
Oh,
get out,
brilliant.
Nigel.
I'll go.
That's good. Can I just say, while the volunteer is rigging up and joining, there's one thing I want to say, which is about politeness. And one of the things, ironically or paradoxically, that can wreck a group that's starting to work well is when somebody spots something but is then too polite to mention it, thinking that politeness is the right way to go. Actually, it's quite the reverse. Sometimes we have to be impolite to fix something that is starting to go wrong, but not terribly wrong. Simon, welcome. Thank you so much for shoving your hand up. Great. So interesting. So there was something. So that's one thing. And just a very quick note on stage directions. I have this metaphor in my head in this know it, see it, say it world, where the say it is about calling out the things that we wouldn't normally say. So in a play, you know, the actors speak the lines. They don't actually call out the stuff in italics, in brackets, which is the stage directions. The author of the play, the playwright, is telling them how they need to deliver the line. But you don't call that stuff out, and you don't call out, you know, Simon now moves from stage left to stage right and looks angry. No, Simon's supposed to look at the script and behave it. What we do when we're saying it is to break the rules and actually call out the fact that Simon looks angry, or the fact that Simon has walked from one room to the other, one side of the stage to the other. So we're calling out the stuff that wouldn't normally be read out. So I would toss that in. It's breaking the social rules often, because you're calling out the stuff that everybody's trying to ignore. It's one thing to be uncomfortable noticing somebody doing something, but to actually call it out, oh my goodness, it's breaking all the rules. So that's the challenge in the say it of no, it's see it, say it. I'm going to withdraw now again and pass you back to Catherine to manage you through this next bit.
So same brief. You're discussing what you've learned today in this stuff online, and this time, as you're noticing things, just say it for the group. And we'll just do this for 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm going to duck out while you're doing it.
Simon, you've been observing, so I wondered, I'm going to ask you what you think.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yes, I was only in the morning session today, just for the coaching one. Sadly, I couldn't make the afternoon session. No, it's been very interesting, and from what I hear from a lot of you as well, that we're all facing challenges with working differently, working remotely, not being around our usual social circles. And yes, with everything that's going on and going forward, a lot of it's very relevant to what I'm doing, especially from the coaching aspect this morning, and understanding how to bring teams together remotely. So 2 very valuable sessions to me. Now, I don't know about yourselves, if you kind of are all experiencing that to an extent, having to work with teams remotely. How about you, Natasha?
Hello, Simon. Nice meeting you virtually. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. I do have experience to working virtually quite a bit, so I think this has not been much change for me. But I sort of like it. I think I found this quite resourceful, and like this webinar today, mixing the theory and some examples when people come in bravely and answering questions. So it was really useful for me. I really especially enjoyed the second webinar, or having the difficult conversations. and using the silence and sort of tips around it. Yeah, very good. Good for me.
And everybody else is working remotely a bit strange for you?
Not for me, Simon. I've managed remote teams for many years and work as part of a remote team currently. So we've been embracing MS Teams, for example, for the best part of a year already. Already done some online delivery for a number of years. So this is not strange in terms of a working context. This is the first time I've actually been on sort of a webinar which has had sort of multiple people from across sort of the UK and probably further afield. So that's a really new dynamic for me, but I'm loving it. It's great just to meet new people. I really enjoy that, get the opportunity to hear their side of the experiences. So it's brilliant. Thank you.
Can I toss one? Can I toss one in? Can I ask you what you think? Because what we Rachel and Diane obviously would be very interested, but it'd be really interesting to see what you think about how it's gone, and also hearing from Rachel and Diane the bits that you're pleased with and not pleased with, and really open that up a little bit, because that's where some there might be some slightly more challenging things going through people's heads.
Is that a question to myself or anyone in particular?
To everybody, Simon. If that's what's it been? What have you noticed? What's it been like?
I was just going to say something about something I've noticed here and something that I'm feeling, having new coming into the conversation as a new team.
Terrific.
It feels like all the eyes are on me all of a sudden. I don't know if you're feeling that you're drawn to pay a bit more attention to me rather than others now. It just feels like you've had a conversation. I've come into it now when that conversation has been a bit bygone with my involvement. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, Simon. I think the funny thing for me is I'm very mindful from the feedback from the previous conversation where I was seen as taking the lead and asking the questions and letting silence do its work. So I've kind of sort of made a conscious effort to step back, which you're probably picking up on as well. Yeah, so you probably picked up on that as well. So Diane wants to come in there.
I've noticed that Natasha, and it's interesting when we specifically have asked you come forward and speak, and then I noticed you sort of sit back, and it's not. It feels like you're really wisely observing us all, which isn't uncomfortable, but it's really interesting because I'm thinking, what is Natasha thinking? What's she observing? Which is really good. It's just what I've noticed, that sort of sitting back. And,
yeah. Oh, I've been sitting for 8 hours, so I think it's just
trying to get comfortable.
Trying to get comfortable. I think I used to, as I say, I think the silence for me, it's a thinking time. When you think, you digest what people are saying, and you you see where the conversation's going. I think, I volunteered because I think I just see the value of these exercises and trying it and trying to analyze and reflect on them. And I think I naturally I know naturally I'm sort of more an introvert, but depending on situation, there's a meetings where you have to run them, so you put more energy and you sort of go for it. You lead on the agenda and you talk. And if I found that in this particular exercise, I wanted to try a different approach, see how the sort of more silent, more thinking and observing role goes. Yeah.
I'm gonna, Paul, we're just checking. Paul's put a question up here. Anybody spotted what happened 2 to 3 minutes ago? Did you put that up just now, Paul? Maybe any of the panelists did.
Oh, sorry, I'm joining this.
I don't know. I've noticed people shuffling in their seats a lot more, but I think that's just because it's been a long day.
So I noticed how quiet it was when Simon first joined, and when when Paul invited you to speak, Simon, and say, what did you notice and what was it like for you? Actually, you brought out in the open that it felt like all the eyes were on you, and that somehow what you did was you actually were putting a name to that awkwardness in noticing that, in noticing what was going on for you. Was there anything else anyone wanted to pick up on in the how?
I was interested in that Simon did that, and then the conversation. Diane mentioned something, and then the conversation entirely went on to Diane's point, which is no worse or more valuable or less valuable, but it never went back to Simon and what he'd said. So I started to feel uncomfortable, and I said, a 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10. Ooh, Simon just said something there. Now the conversation's cantered off. What happened to Simon?
No, I think differently to that, Paul. I think that Simon pulled that out, and I acknowledged that with Simon and said, yeah, I made a conscious effort to step back and sort of let the silence speak and let others lead and do other things. So I think that by acknowledging that, and then this conversation did go off on different tangents, but I felt that it was actually became more evenly spread again, that the attention was shifted from Simon for, around the group and shared more evenly.
I haven't heard Rachel speak this time since I've been in the conversation.
Yeah, that's true.
I've been trying to find a way in here, but
so I think that we need to stop the conversation here, but that was a great example of noticing. Sorry, Rachel. I'm just at the time. I want to give us some time for question and answers, and so I'm going to thank the panelists that have come in to join us. Unless, Paul, have you got anything you want to say before
we can do that? We can do that as part of the summary. So yeah, thank you so much, Hazel, Simon, Natasha, Rachel. Right, no, I'm not going to thank Rachel.
Yes, you should thank Rachel.
Thank you.
And Diane and Catherine.
Yeah, and everybody, you're all wonderful. Yeah, but they should know by now. So thanks so much, all of you. So yeah, we'll if you can get ready to go. Well done. Oh, they're so well trained. I tell you what, we have the best panelists, absolutely the best.
So I think what we wanted to do is just give you a little summary of mending it, the noticing that things might need mending, the knowing it, and the seeing the signs of it, which we've been talking about several of those as we've gone through, and then saying it for the group. And
yeah,
just a very brief moment of thank you. Go on, Paul.
So I wanted to highlight, we decided, and you asked me to develop a couple of slides, Catherine, and so I think I might deploy them now. So if we haven't dwelt so much on the know it bit, I'm going to actually turn my camera on and say hi. So we haven't dealt so much with know it, which is this self-knowledge, but actually no, not true, because Hazel, you've been very sharp at calling yourself on, I know I come in and, I'm nice and I rescue people and, whatever, rescue, not your word, mine, but I come in and help and sort of make it more comfortable for people. Interestingly, somebody in the chat, the reason why the rescue word popped out of my mouth there unbidden is because somebody mentioned it in the chat. Somebody who saw it in themselves. It was actually a Debbie saying, it reminded me of a drama triangle, some rescuer tendencies. And then she goes on to say, I'm a rescuer by nature and find it so useful to be aware of this so I can coach instead of rescuing. And it's so helpful for my clients. So well called out, Debbie. So there's a couple of great instances, Debbie and Hazel doing this know it piece here. And the see it, this happens really quickly. And because of the stuff that we're talking about is normal, it often goes unnoticed until we make a real point of it. So one of the things that goes unnoticed is when people are being really nice to each other. But again, somebody did spot that, and how that can help somebody to, feel comfortable and settle down. Of course, if I'm being rather perverse and turning that on its head, people being nice to each other, well, that's one of the problems that groupthink is based on. So if you're a senior team and you're making important decisions about what should be done, people being nice about the solution that is being proffered, nice to the CEO, nice to each other, run into a really big problem of not having a critical friend in the room to raise it. I'm not saying that's what was going on in this particular room, because there was a particular service that was being done by you supporting each other. It's just one thing that can really fracture a group when or make the group malfunction when no one's prepared to call out something that's maybe almost too good, if I'm being perverse. To the say it bit, and this is the bit that Catherine particularly wanted me to mention. So since this is my sort of bit, I will get onto that. So let me just reduce this little drawing here for a second so that it doesn't take over the entire screen. So bear with me while I do some jiggery pokery here. There we go. So I'm going to just keep that to one side over here. Now I want to show you what this the say it bit actually sounds like. You saw it, and well, you heard it in action this afternoon, and in fact Catherine was doing it a lot. And you'll and these constructions may be familiar to you, but I'm going to clarify it for everybody. So there's a couple of different ways of saying it, and saying it, the most obvious one is to speak up for my own feelings, or Catherine to speak up for hers, or Hazel for hers, or Simon for his, and say, look, I'm not really comfortable, or I'm feeling really comfortable. Thank you for making me feel so welcome. So that's a really obvious say it. Obviously, it's trickier if a group is fracturing to say, actually, this really isn't working for me, or I'm not feeling happy, I'm not feeling comfortable with the way this is going. But that's the way we recommend you have a crack at interrupting this, doing this rather impolite thing, which is to say what the feeling is: uncomfortable, pleased, irritated, fed up, switched off, and name the feeling. It's not a thought, it's definitely the name of a feeling or emotion. And the second thing is, what is it about? What's just happened, or what has just been happening that has made you feel like that? So for example, somebody raised it, it might have been Simon, I might have read it on the chat, which is, I'm feeling suspicious. I'm starting to get suspicious that we're all being very nice to each other and we're not getting down to the real thing. And then the why. Now this is a bonus ball, but the why is about, why am I feeling like that about that thing? Well, the reason I'm suspicious, or the reason I'm slightly bothered that we're being very nice to each other, is that we might not actually be able to interrogate this solution well enough, or I'm wondering if we're going to get beyond the polite phase. So that would be quite a big and controversial thing to say, but it could actually help a great deal to make a group more truthful, even if it's not yet fractured. So there's one thing to do. It was one possibility, which is to speak up. The other possibility, let me just rub this out. The other possibility is to do the flip side of that, which is to help somebody who's not speaking up. And this did happen also in all three segments, I think, and I know Catherine did it, and I heard a few people do it. Speaking up for somebody else to help them out by noticing how they're feeling and calling it out, saying it. And the way this sounds is, Simon, you seem a bit uncomfortable, or Simon, it sounds like you felt a bit of pressure when you thought the eyes were all on you. So Simon, it sounds like you felt, hang on a second, I'm going to get the pencil, felt a bit of pressure when you thought the eyes were all on you. And I could guess that, I guess the reason why you felt the pressure is because you quite like being in the background or something like that. This third bit, it's optional, so you don't have to say it. In fact, just being able to call out number one, you seem, Catherine, you seem uncomfortable. Peter, you seem pleased about the way this is going. Jane, you're not happy. That's already gold dust. So those are the two options for this say it thing here. Assertiveness and empathy. There we have it. Back to you.
Well, we've got about 2 or 3 minutes, but we'll always take questions in injury time, as Paul says. So when everybody else has gone, I don't know if any panelists have got any questions for us, but just while anybody's writing anything up, it's just to remind us of why this matters, because ultimately teams that mend themselves can get the real stuff done. It's a bit like Paul talking about not being so nice that the real conversation doesn't happen, or, you know, without picking on Hazel, but when we're helpers, and I'm a helper, not helping the group, so it's only the stuff I choose to bring to the group that gets heard. It's so the really important things get heard. And there were a couple of points when Diane did it, and I think Simon also did it, with Natasha bringing in a point of view that was actually quite different and that might have been missed in the group. So I don't know if we've got any questions to go with. Anything in the Paul Furey team that we haven't mentioned that you'd like to bring up?
I'll come on screen with you. Yeah, any of the boys and girls on our team who think Catherine or I or have missed something which is worth hearing. I've got one or two things to say, but please speak up if you think we've missed a trick.
Nothing, Nigel. Nothing from me. I think you've covered everything.
Yeah, likewise. I can't think of anything else to say there.
So
it's
shall
just
I?
The importance of in yourself, isn't it? And how quickly we all jump in to take action around the things we're noticing, and the fact we can actually call it out for the benefit of the group.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I got this afternoon overwhelmingly, which was so nice, and the charge was you know, Natasha was definitely in there, and Simon, but the charge was certainly led by Hazel, which is this sheer generosity and being nice. And I would emphasize that groups that fracture rarely fracture because people are being too nice to each other. They might sometimes make some poor decisions, but certainly assuming the best. And specifically, if somebody is quote unquote misbehaving, assuming that they're doing it out of discomfort and not out of badness is something that I can imagine the people who I've seen in action today from the audience, from participants, and also amongst ourselves. You know, it's if someone's doing something apparently nasty to me or uncaring, it's probably because they're deeply uncomfortable and usually frightened in some way, in a way that they would never admit to or might not even know it themselves. So I'd like to think that the generosity that was displayed today in this session and in the previous two sessions on screen is played out when things are going really badly and you think that someone's being really nasty. The chances are they're even more helpless than you. And turning on the niceness, I think, will count for a huge amount to pull them out of that nasty space. That's what I would say.